Chapter 19, Deadly Darkness. Bushy Trot's eyes gleamed like a maniac's as he laid the spider on a corner of the piano desk. At once it started to crawl toward the floor, and he gave a low laugh of satisfaction. Nancy rolled herself sideways to get out of its path. Her eyes focused for a second on the 3 steps to the attic. If only I could pull myself up them, I might be able to escape. "Don't expect any help from the old man," Trot said with a look of satisfaction. "March is sound asleep in the garden, and he won't wake up for a long, long time." The man chuckled, pleased with his accomplishment. Nancy's heart nearly stopped beating. What had he done to Mr. March? "Now, just to be sure nobody else comes here," Trot continued, "I'll fix that attic door so it can't be opened." Nancy's heart sank as he moved to the opening through which she had hoped to escape. He swung the battered door shut, then rearranged the long wooden bar which she and Mr. March had broken down. Thoroughly enjoying himself, Bushy Trot looked around. Seeing the spider, he scooped it up in the bottle and shook it. "Just to liven the thing up a bit," he said. Once more the man held it above the piano desk. The Black Widow crawled out and dropped onto the yellowed keys of the instrument. "I always carry one of these with me in case of need," Trot explained. "Well, good night, young lady." He grinned at Nancy. "And goodbye. Goodbye forever." To her horror, he picked up the candle and retreated to the opening in the floor which Nancy guessed led to the old servants' quarters. She struggled desperately to free herself. "You can't escape," Trot taunted her. "The Black Widow may not come quickly, but she'll finally find you." The man held the candle in the direction of the piano desk. Nancy saw the spider climbing slowly down one leg of the instrument. It was not a dozen feet away from her. "Sweet dreams," whispered Trot, blowing out the candle. He took a flashlight from his pocket, turned it on, then lowered himself into the opening. Before disappearing, he pulled the piano desk over the hole. The old attic was in complete darkness. Nancy knew the Black Widow was coming closer to her, but she had no idea which way to roll to avoid its deadly bite. Nancy expected the poisonous spider to strike at any moment. Then a thought came to her. Perhaps if she lay very still, the spider might decide she was not going to harm it and leave her alone. Suddenly, Nancy's anger at Trot's vile deed took possession of her. No one but herself could testify that he had stolen Phip March's music, and that he carried deadly Black Widows to use on anyone who might stand in his way. "I must get out of here," Nancy told herself over and over again. "That terrible man must be arrested at once." She could not scream, nor could she loosen her bonds. Nancy found, however, that she was able to raise both her feet and thump them hard on the floor. Would the sounds carry to Effie's room? And if they did, would the timid maid come upstairs, break down the door, and venture into the secret room? "I believe she'd do that if she thought I was in danger," Nancy reassured herself. She rolled across the floor until reaching the steps to the main attic. Then she pounded on them with all her might. After waiting several minutes and getting no response, Nancy gave up hope of rescue from this source. "If I could only move the piano desk and get down that hole," she thought. "There must be a stairway." Nancy realized that in the pitch blackness she would probably fall and be badly injured. Suddenly, Nancy heard her name called. The sound was far away. Her heart sank. But in a moment, hurrying footsteps came from somewhere. "Nancy! Nancy!" a male voice called out. "Oh, I hope I'm not imagining things," she thought. "Nancy, where are you?" a girl shouted. Now she could hear jumbled voices in the big attic. Again, her name was called. Nancy thumped with all her strength. The next instant, a body crashed against the door and it burst open. A flashlight shone in her eyes. "Thank goodness you're safe," were the words Nancy heard. She could hardly believe her good fortune. The speaker was Ned Nickerson. Bess, George, and Effie crowded into the room after him, but Ned took complete charge of the situation. Springing forward, he jerked the gag from Nancy's mouth. Then he cut her bonds with his pocket knife and helped the girl to her feet. "Nancy, if anything had happened to you, who did this?" he demanded gruffly. Bushy Trot, "Oh, Ned." Her arm shaking, she pointed to the floor. The Black Widow was less than 2 feet away. As Effie let out a scream, Ned crushed the spider with his foot. The others murmured in relief. "Have any of you seen Mr. March?" Nancy asked quickly. The others gazed at her, perplexed. "Isn't he in bed?" Effie asked. Nancy told them of Bushy Trot's sinister words. Like a shot, George dashed down the stairs of the old attic on her way to the garden. Bess and Effie followed. Nancy started after them, but Ned held her back. "Are you really all right?" he asked in deep concern. "Yes, Ned." She smiled at him. "I was pretty scared for a while, I admit, but I'm okay now. Really." "Boy, you sure gave me a scare," Ned said. Together they went downstairs quickly and outdoors. "By the old servants' quarters," Nancy called to the girls. She led the way as Ned held the flashlight. Under a lilac bush they found the crumpled form of Mr. March. Effie let out a frightened moan. Is he? Ned pulled the still figure from beneath the bush. Nancy felt the elderly man's pulse. "He's alive," she said, "but the shock may prove to be too much for him." They carried Mr. March into the house. Under their kindly ministrations, he quickly regained consciousness. Nancy had warned the others not to tell him what had happened in the secret room. Presently, he went upstairs to rest. "I have to go to River Heights right away," said Nancy. "Effie, I can't explain now, but you'll be all right here alone. That shadowy figure will never come back." "Thank goodness," said the maid. "You and your friends go right along, and I'll take good care of Mr. March." "Where are you going?" George asked. "To Mr. Dite. I know he has the address of Bushy Trot." Explanations were in order on both sides. Nancy suggested they tell their stories while riding along. When they went outside, the young people saw a car turn into the driveway of Pleasant Hedges. The man at the wheel proved to be Mr. Drew. "What luck!" Nancy cried out. "Oh, Dad, I'm so glad to see you," she said hurriedly as he stopped at the door. "Can you go to Mr. Dite's house with us right away?" "Sure can," he replied. "But what's up? More clues?" It was Bushy Trot who was stealing Fifth March's music, and he got away with the rest of it tonight. We must find out his address from Lawrence Dite and then notify the police. "Hop into my car, everybody," Carson Drew called out. Nancy gave her father and her friends the story of her evening's adventure in detail. At Nancy's recital of her experience being tied up in the dark with a black widow spider, Mr. Drew was shocked. "You shouldn't take such chances," he told his daughter. "Bravery is one thing, but dealing with a man like Trot..." Nancy said, "How could I have guessed there was a trapdoor under the piano desk? Anyway, it's fortunate that my friends rescued me," she added cheerfully. "It was just luck that we did," Ned explained. "Tonight when I came to River Heights, even though it was getting late, I wanted to see you. Mrs. Gruen told me where you were, and I got Bess and George to show me the way out here." By this time, Mr. Drew had reached River Heights. Bess thought that she and George ought to go home, and were driven to their respective houses. "If you and your father have a job to do," said Ned, "perhaps I should go too." "Oh, please stay," Nancy urged. Mr. Drew added, "I believe we'll need an extra man before the night's over. One with good, strong muscles." End of chapter 19.